What happens after you die? There's a philosopher who looked at that exact question and pointed at something stranger than any answer to it. Ludwig Wittgenstein once said, "The real question of life after death isn't whether or not it exists, but even if it does, what problem this really solves." Sit with that for a second, because he's not arguing about proof. He's not weighing evidence for or against an afterlife at all. He's asking something almost nobody bothers to ask first. Suppose you got a clean, certain yes. Suppose you knew, with total confidence, that something continues after this. What would that actually fix? That question is going to keep coming back through this entire video. Wittgenstein spent much of his career studying where language stops working, where a sentence sounds perfectly fine and turns out to be empty underneath. "Whereof one cannot speak," he said, "thereof one must be silent." Life after death is exactly that kind of sentence. It sounds fine, subject, preposition, object, but life is a word we understand through breathing, aging, wanting, losing. Death is defined as the end of exactly those things. So what is that phrase actually describing, once you strip out everything the word life normally carries? Wittgenstein's suspicion was never that the afterlife is false. It's that arguing about whether it exists might be arguing about a sentence that was never fully saying anything to begin with, which is exactly why he redirects the whole question. Stop asking if it's real. Start asking what it's actually for. Gilbert Ryle gives that suspicion a shape you can picture. He calls it a category mistake. A visitor tours a university, sees the library, the labs, the lecture halls, and then asks, "But where is the university itself?" He's confused two different kinds of question. The university isn't a hidden extra building. It's the name for the whole thing functioning together. "Where do I go after death?" might be making the same mistake. It sounds like it's asking for a location, the way it makes sense to ask where you go after a movie ends. But maybe death isn't a doorway into another room. Maybe it's the end of anywhere, as a category, for you specifically. And here's the important part. Even if Ryle's worry turns out wrong, even if there really is a room on the other side, Wittgenstein's question is still standing there waiting. Fine, there's a room. What problem does the room actually solve? Here's something strange Epicurus noticed over 2,000 years ago, and Freud landed on independently, centuries later. Nobody has ever actually managed to imagine their own death. Try it. You picture the funeral, the grief, the room going dark. But there's still a you doing the imagining. Still a perspective watching from somewhere inside the scene. Death is nothing to us, Epicurus said, since while we exist, death is not present. And when death is present, we do not exist. So ask honestly, is the fear you're carrying around actually fear of death? Or is it fear of the one thing you've never once finished picturing, patched over with whatever answer feels most reassuring at the time? This is where Wittgenstein's real question starts doing actual work. Because people usually want immortality to fix one of a small handful of things. Fear, the animal terror of simply ending, meaning, the hope that a short life adds up to something bigger than the life itself. Justice, the hope that cruelty gets answered somewhere, if not here. Separation, the hope of seeing again the people already lost. Love, the hope that connection doesn't just stop mid-sentence. Take those one at a time and run Wittgenstein's actual question against each. Does eternity solve fear? Maybe, if eternity means safety. But an eternity you can still lose, still be punished in, still fail inside, doesn't remove fear. It just relocates it somewhere with no exit. Miguel de Unamuno lived inside exactly this problem and never pretended it resolved cleanly. Reason gives you no evidence for personal immortality, he admitted, and yet something in him refused to accept extinction anyway. He called this the tragic sense of life, the permanent war between what you can prove and what you cannot stop wanting. And notice, that's not a war eternity settles. It's a war that keeps going even after you've decided what you believe. Does eternity solve meaning? This is the one Wittgenstein goes after most directly. Eternal life, he said, belongs to those who live in the present, not to those who live longest. He's separating two things people constantly mix up. Living forever is a claim about quantity, more time, endlessly stacked. Understanding your life, actually being inside it while it's happening, is a completely different thing, and it has nothing to do with duration. Hand someone infinite, blank time, repeating the same unexamined day forever, and it solves nothing about whether that life ever meant anything. More time was never the same thing as meaning. It's just more time, which brings back his whole point. The problem was never whether life continues. It's whether the life you already have is being paid attention to, and eternity doesn't touch that question either way. Does eternity solve justice? Possibly, but it doesn't need to be infinite to do it. A single, sufficient reckoning would settle a debt just as completely as an endless one. Justice was never really asking for forever. It was asking for enough. Does eternity solve separation, the hope of seeing someone again? This is the one it comes closest to actually answering. But even here, Simone Weil raises a flag worth taking seriously. She distrusted any belief adopted, mainly because it feels comforting. Attention, not consolation, she said, is what real thought owes the world. Ask yourself honestly, when you want to see someone again, are you responding to an argument, or are you responding to how unbearable the alternative feels, and calling the second thing the first? Augustine complicates this from another direction entirely. What if eternity was never supposed to mean endless duration in the first place? He draws a line between time simply continuing without end and something else, timelessness, a completely different category, not a longer now, but the absence of now as a structure at all. If that's closer to right, then most of this conversation, arguing over whether consciousness continues for a very long time, has been arguing about the wrong kind of eternity from the start. And Wittgenstein's question only gets sharper. Even granting a timeless eternity, what problem does stepping outside time actually solve for a creature whose every want, memory, and love was built entirely inside time? And underneath all of it sits one more assumption nobody's checked. Is there even a soul available to do the surviving? Ryle's most famous argument goes straight at this picture. He calls it the ghost in the machine, the old idea of a separate, invisible mind steering the body like a pilot inside a ship. If mental life is really just patterns of behavior and not a hidden ghost waiting to detach, then the whole question of where the soul goes collapses before it even gets started. There's no ghost to ask about if there was never a separate ghost in the first place. Wittgenstein believed philosophy eventually hits real limits, points past which language simply cannot follow. He called whatever lies beyond that boundary the mystical, not vague, not foggy, but precisely because it can't be put into a sentence at all, only gestured toward. Some questions don't stay open because nobody tried hard enough. They stay open because they were never well-formed questions to begin with. Ending in silence, for him, wasn't failure. It might be the most honest thing philosophy can do once it reaches the edge of what language was ever built to carry. So come back to the line this whole video is actually built around. The real question was never whether life after death exists. It's what problem it would actually solve if it did. Run down the list honestly. Fear, meaning, justice, separation, love, and something uncomfortable shows up. Most of them don't need infinity. They need something much smaller and much closer. Attention paid now. Amends made now. Love said out loud now, while there's still a now left to say it in. Maybe that's what's really hiding inside Wittgenstein's line. Maybe centuries spent arguing about whether the light stays on after the room empties out were always a way of avoiding a smaller, harder question about what you're doing with the room while you're still standing in it. If eternal life can't actually explain why you're here in the first place, what exactly were you hoping eternity was going to answer?